Hey everybody, welcome back to the basement. Welcome back to the channel. Today is a long-awaited day for this channel. This has been a three-part series in the making since January of 2022. And as I sit here today, it is May 18th, 2022, and we are finally done with this three-part video series. So if we think back to January, I began doing some work on the layout that included tearing out an old yard and adding a new tunnel portal. After that, we built a town. And then since then, I've been working on constructing an entire lower level reversing loop for my layout. And I am proud to say that it is finally complete. And in fact, a little bit bigger than I thought it was going to be for the filming of this video. So let's check it out right now on Chris's Strange and Things. Let's go. Now, why has it taken 5 months for me to get this done? Well, first thing is I had to order a bunch of curves and switches from Ross Custom Switches, and that took a little bit of time for that to come in. They were about 6 weeks behind. It ended up being about 8 weeks behind when I ordered those in the end of December. So I didn't get them until end of February, so that slowed the process down a little bit. But other than that, it's a lot of work to get all of this done. So before we go into the details, I think we need to go cut the ribbon on the tunnel portal. The construction workers have already moved out of the way as we've been doing some test laps, but we have to cut the ribbon officially and open this up for some traffic. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so here we are up on top of the layout. Here's our tunnel portal. We've got a little ribbon there. Let's go ahead and cut that and open this up for business. So I think the best way to go about this is to get under the layout and see what it looks like under there. That'll help you kind of understand the process of doing this. And I've talked about this before, and this inspiration really came to me from my buddy Jason. JD Stucks, his layout has a lower reversing loop, and he has some staging tracks down underneath his layout. And so when I had the opportunity to see his layout last year, I spent a lot of time under the layout just looking at it, trying to figure out, could I make that work with the space that I have? And that's really the first step, is do you have the real estate to get a slope all the way down underneath your track? And the key thing is you're not just getting it down underneath the table, you have to get it underneath all those supports. So if you have a 2x4, that's another, plus the tabletop, so that's 3.5 plus another 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch of plywood that you've got to go down. So it's a significant decline and slope that you need to have to get those trains below all of those supports. And so that was the first key factor here, was getting a slope that was manageable, with a grade that my engines were going to be able to actually pull cars back up and out. And so let's go check that out now. All right, so now we're down under the layout, and the underside of the layout's really never a pretty thing. My buddy RBP has probably the cleanest space under his layout. Mine's a hot mess because I took up a lot of my basement when I built this layout, so a lot of this is storage. So there's a bunch of old baby stuff under here. Forgive me for that. But what I want you to look at is right here behind me. This is the slope here that the trains come down. So if we go up that direction, that's going to take you to that tunnel portal behind the town, and then it comes down this way, and I've got about 2.5 feet between this and the very end of the layout, and it comes down and around, and that's when it completes that full 072 curve, because we're using 072 curves here. That's where it gets to the very bottom of the slope, and this is a 2.5% grade. I had it originally at 3%, did some tests, was just too much, especially with the curve, because you're getting a lot more friction between the flanges and the rail. So I needed to make sure that it was not going to be quite as bad. So I've shimmed a lot of these areas here, brought that track up and brought that grade down to about 2.5%, which made it very manageable for my engines. All right, so we're a little bit further into the mayhem now. One of the things I had to do is cut out a bigger hole here. So this is actually a pop-up hole that goes to the very upper part of my layout. This is where that farm scene is. And then this level here is where my track comes through underneath from the main loop. I had to make this hole a little bit bigger because I needed to be able to get the trains to come down. So I had to cut this out And this is where this slope comes down here. And then it comes all the way around behind me. And I've added some LED lights down here, which really helped make my life a lot easier during this process. And it comes all the way around. And this is going to be my first switch. And this is just going to be a Ross number 4. And it is set up for non-derailing, because basically what happens is the trains can come down and they can go that way, or they can come this direction and do a big loop. And we're gonna go check that out here. But basically what I wanted to be able to do is they come down, they can go either way. And when they come back, this switch will throw and they can come right back up. And that creates a really dynamic scene for that double reversing inner loop that we have on this layout now. In fact, this is now set up in a way that you can run a train through the entire thing, all three loops, and it takes like 14 minutes or so at a speed step of 60. We're going to do that with a GoPro in a couple weeks, and hopefully we'll get that video out soon too. But let's keep going, because not only is this a reversing loop, but they're staging tracks now. Let's go check those out. All right, again, it's not pretty down here. Now I've got a bunch of boxes and a bunch of Woodland Scenics containers. But this track comes down along this wall, and it's all supported along the wall, and I've got some extra tracks stacked up here. In fact, this was originally going to be where my staging tracks were. Turned out to be easier to go to this other side over here. So we've got a big 072 curve that's supported here right along the wall. And then I decided to switch out one of my 072 curves with this 072 switch. And that allows me to have the staging tracks right along here. This is another Ross number 4 yard switch, which allows me to store all of my Pennsylvania P70s, my Golden Gate Depot cars, with my B60 baggage car, and then the reefer car. And then I have enough space down here right now to store some passenger cars, which is great because it helps get them off the layout. My goal is to get the Acela down here too. I think I need just a little bit more track, but that's okay. I basically ran out of plywood. I just have plywood that goes right along the wall here. It's supported by a 2x4, and it's going to continue all the way down, and that's going to be how that is powered for me. The power on my yard staging tracks is controllable right on the front fascia, so I can turn that on and off if I'm storing engines or cars down here that have lights. We don't want that to be pulling some of the power off the transformer. So that's what it looks like down here. You'll notice this wire in front of me. There's a lot of wires under my layout. In fact, I've said it before that one of the mistakes I made was not being cleaner with my wiring, but getting those wires out of the way was another big headache for this project, because a lot of those things dangle and they get caught up on cars. And I tested all of this with one of my scale auto racks, which really helped make my life easy when I went to go run trains, because I knew those auto racks had already had clearance coming down here, but the wires were a big issue. One of the tools that was very useful, lots of zip ties, and then basically my multi-tool that just like an oscillating type saw to help cut away some pieces. And I added a lot more supports to the layout, a lot more 2x4 legs in different areas because of what I had to cut out, but it was all worth it in the end. Let's go run a train down here and you can see what it looks like.